I do think playfulness will get us out of a rut a whole lot quicker than seriousness. So here's Contextual Ed 1. That class about contextual theology, the branch of practical theology right alongside pastoral, homiletics, and liturgics. It's that theory and practice that are in relationship with each other. It brings them together, the books we read, the models we look at, and the ways we live together in churches. It's about the way we look at congregations. It's about the context and the ways we look at ourselves as leaders. It's about the way we look at the broader community and the world around us and how they are all related. And so we use lenses to help us with that. We use not just one lens, because this is a whole lot bigger, seeing the way God sees us, trying to know as God's known. And so we use lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of lenses. Because you know why? It's because we want the church to be fully alive in Christ. And so we ask questions, lots of questions about things like what's going on and why is it going on and what ought to be going on and how can we respond. And so we have people like good old Bob Gallagher. He came up in the beginning of the congregational development scene about 25 years ago with 4 different ways of looking at the dynamics of parish life. This is the Christian life model, the one that integrates all of the ways that we're grounded in our life together in Christ. And so we ask those questions about our worship, about the ways we're studying together and the ways we're acting on it, the oversight that ties them together. We look at the shape of the parish, and we remember that it helps us think about the parish as a whole, about the way the health of the parish deepens our spiritual lives, drawing us closer to Christ, while staying open to the different places that people are on their faith journey. He also told us about another way of looking at things, the renewal apostolate cycle. That takes the waters of baptism that we are grounded in our identity and reminds us that we are the hands and feet of Christ as we move out into the world, a continuous cycle and dynamic. And another way, he says, we can look at our congregations is through the lens of the Benedictine promise, that way of seeing the dynamics of change and conversion, the being grounded in the way things are in our tradition and always staying open to listening to Christ and the ways God's calling us back to conversion again. We also found that Arlen Rothage was a good person to turn to when looking at the lens of size dynamics. Kevin Martin helped him with that. They reminded us that, first of all, the different sized churches aren't about being a big deal because you've got more buildings or people or money, that those different sizes are all important in God's eyes and ours. He reminded us that it's about leadership and about incorporating new people. It's about finding ways that we can not try to fit a square peg into a round hole, but remember that in all the different sized churches, the ways that people lead and that we work together and the ways that we incorporate new people will have to change. And then Alice Mann came along, and she helped us remember that the dynamics as we change sizes in either direction are following something like an N curve. The way we lead and work together changes with those different sizes, and the hardest one of all is that pastoral to program transition, because we're having to cross 2 different types of change, leadership and the way we're organized and work together. We also look through the lens of the life cycle of churches. They're born and they die just like other living beings. But we make a mistake if we think we can enjoy it when we're stable in the middle of our growth, and remember through that happy little S-curve that we need, right when it seems like things are getting better and better and we're about to get to have a break, to take another wave, to ride another spirit wave to where we need to go with new ways of bringing growth and health and life. Where is your parish in that life cycle? We look at the lens of leadership as another way of seeing how our congregations operate. Those 4 questions that practical theology asks, well, that's the 4 essential components of leadership thinking. We define what's going on, account for it, point to what God's calling us to, and then find a plan, a way to respond. Bless our hearts. Those leadership levels will change over time and will move from just having to follow because someone's in the position, they are the one in charge as the rector or ruler, instead to moving to level 5 over time, to where people come together around a leader because they have respect for who she is and for the ways that she has integrity in their life together. There's another way of looking at leadership in terms of transactional or technical fixes. Let's just get the job done, for goodness sake. Or transformational leadership, those adaptive challenges that call us to the harder work of looking at the big picture and vision, the balcony view. We also remember that we need to look through the lens of history. Without history, we can't know our identity, and without knowing our identity, then we'll never be able to find our destiny. So another lens that we use is looking at our Genesis stories, the congregations and their ways of beginning and how they have grown since then. We remember that people can't be disconnected in churches from the old and the new, that they need to be able to recognize the connection between the two, and that the essential DNA of every congregation, continually renewing itself in ways so that the essential integrity remains intact, means that we don't have to worry about changing beyond who we are in God's eyes. And then systems theory, another lens that helps us look beneath the surface and recognize it's not just about the person or the single congregation at a single moment. It's about all of us being connected in a bigger picture that we call an emotional field. There are generations and there are relationships that over and over again will influence the ways we respond, especially the ways we respond to anxiety. In family systems theory, we remember that the 2 most important things are to be able to remain an I that's connected to another, to be separate but together, not cut off like Aaron tended to do with those whiny people in the wilderness. Instead, we also need to know that being a non-anxious presence means we can tolerate some of that anxiety and pain. And so we don't have to triangle in golden calves or the neighbors in order to deal with the anxiety. We don't just stand there and do something. Instead, like Moses, we can remember that we don't just do something, we can stand there, remembering as the non-anxious presence that all will be well, remembering that we can stay connected through our shared awareness of God's commandments and values that bind us together as a family. And so we remember the good triangles that can happen, even when there's conflict between you and me, that God is the third party that binds us together. Just like a person can do a genogram to look at their family history and the systems that influence them, so can a church. A congregational genogram is something that you might want to try sometime. Just ask Lynn Stabler. She's doing one of the School of Theology. So that's our congregational context. And after we finish that, we'll take just a quick look at what's to come. We're going to look at yourself. We're going to look at your strengths. And we're going to find ways that you can offer your strengths to the church. We're going to remember that, you know what? It is not all about us, but actually it is about being able to see that God's Spirit is at work, remembering everything we need to see the church grow has been provided by God, that we don't have to try to push or pull the church on our own strength. That really congregational vitality is about practices, those spiritual practices that Diana Butler Bass talks about in people and in congregations. And so when it comes right down to it, mutual ministry is the most sustainable way for us to keep the devil out. It's too easy to blow out one single big candle if we try to be the light that leads the way. It's got to be all of God's people together in mutual ministry, because Satan can't blow that one out. We'll spend time looking at the tools that we each can draw on that might work for us to enable that mutual ministry. And then we'll take the congregation and you and put them all together and share with each other an analysis of what that looks like in our field ed parishes. We'll take a look at the community context too, at how we can reach out and expand our congregation's reaches. We'll look at what it means to speak faithfully in a digital reformation. And we'll also look at evangelism. And finally, at some of the ways that we can draw on being like Luke, someone who's out there marketing the good news, sharing it with the world around us, using media to put forth the mission of the church. And finally, it's the end.